I was 7 months pregnant, carrying groceries up 3 flights of stairs while my husband played video games. I was 7 months pregnant when my husband looked at me and said I was disgusting to look at. I just hauled 6 bags of groceries up 3 flights of stairs while he sat on the couch playing video games. When I finally collapsed into a kitchen chair, drenched in sweat and gasping for air, he glanced over and said it. "You're getting disgusting. You better lose that weight fast after the baby, or I'll find someone who actually takes care of herself." His friends laughed through the headset. He wanted them to hear it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just smiled, kissed his forehead, and told him I needed a shower. The confused look on his face would have been funny if I wasn't dying inside. Alan and I had been together for 5 years, married for 3. We met doing community theater. I was working on costumes. He was the lead. He was this charismatic musician type who seemed passionate about everything. I fell hard. Things were good, or at least I thought they were. We had inside jokes, late night talks, plans for the future. It felt like partnership. Then I got pregnant. It wasn't planned, but after the shock wore off, I was excited. Alan said all the right things at first, but his actions told a different story. He started spending more time gaming with his friends and less time helping around the house. I told myself he was just processing the change in his own way. Men mature slower, right? This pregnancy had been brutal. 3 months of constant nausea, anemia, and now my back felt like someone was twisting it in half most days. I kept waiting for him to step up. He kept promising he would when the baby comes. That day with the groceries was the breaking point. I just finished work and stopped at the store on the way home. We lived on the 3rd floor with no elevator. When I walked in with my arms full, Alan was sprawled on the couch surrounded by empty energy drink cans, headset on, yelling at his screen. I asked if he could help bring up the rest. He waved me off without looking, said he was in the middle of something important. So I did it myself. 6 trips up and down those stairs, 7 months pregnant, my ankles swelling inside my shoes, my back screaming with every step. By the time I set down the last bag, I could barely breathe. That's when he said it, just looked over casually, like he was commenting on the weather, and told me I was disgusting. Told me to lose the weight, or he'd find someone better, and his friends, they laughed. He'd said it loud enough for them to hear on purpose. In the shower, with the water drowning out the sound, I finally let myself cry. But they weren't just sad tears. They were angry tears. Clarity tears. I suddenly saw every red flag I'd been ignoring for 5 years in perfect focus. The comments about my changing body throughout the pregnancy, the jokes about how I used to be so hot, the questions about my plan to get back in shape. I told myself he didn't mean it that way, that he was just joking. But this was the mask coming off completely. I thought about the child I was about to bring into this world. A child who would learn that this is what relationships look like. A child who would either learn to treat others this way or accept being treated this way, and something inside me just said no, not anymore. I got dressed, told Alan I needed some air, and left. He barely looked up from his game. I grabbed my hospital bag, already packed because I'm a planner, my laptop, my important documents, and walked out. 20 minutes later, I was checking into a hotel. I called my sister Anne. She lived about an hour away, and when I told her what happened, she didn't hesitate. She'd be there in the morning to help me figure things out. Alan called twice that night and texted once, asking where the leftovers were in the fridge. Not where I was. Where the leftovers were. I sat in that hotel room at 2 a.m, unable to sleep, watching his messages come through. First confusion, then irritation, then attempts at guilt. I was just joking. You know how the guys are. The latest one said, I better not be spending our money on a hotel. Our money. The same money that was 90% from my paycheck while he invested in his music career. The baby kicked hard, like she was telling me something. I put my hand on my belly and whispered, "I've got you. We're going to be okay." And for the first time that day, I actually believed it. When Anne arrived the next morning, we talked through everything. She was furious on my behalf, but practical too. We decided I needed to go back to the apartment temporarily while I got my affairs in order. She warned me not to let Alan know I was planning to leave until I was ready. Looking back, that was the best advice I got. When I returned home, Alan acted like nothing had happened. When I brought up his comment, he rolled his eyes and said I was being too sensitive. Then he turned it around on me, said I'd been so moody lately and he was walking on eggshells. He actually said, "Do you know how hard this pregnancy has been for me?" For him. I nearly lost it, but I remembered the plan. So I took a deep breath, apologized for overreacting, and said I was just tired and hormonal. The relief on his face was immediate. He thought he'd won, that I was back in line. He had no idea what was coming. The next 4 weeks were the hardest of my life. I lived a double life, outwardly playing the role of apologetic pregnant wife while systematically preparing to leave. I started keeping a detailed journal of Alan's behavior, dates and times, and exactly what he said. I quietly recorded some of our conversations on my phone when he was being particularly nasty. My lawyer said it could help. I'd always kept my paycheck going to my personal account, thank God, but now I moved everything to a new account at a different bank. I started transferring money from our joint account in small amounts that wouldn't raise suspicion, basically reclaiming what I'd contributed over the years. Then I found something that made me sick. Going through our financial records, I discovered Alan had a credit card in my name that I didn't know existed. He'd racked up over $5,000 in debt for his gaming PC and other equipment. I reported it as fraud immediately, gathered all the documentation I could find. I collected every important document, birth certificate, marriage license, bank statements, tax returns, and moved them to a secure location outside the apartment. My sister helped me find a small 2-bedroom place that was ground floor, no stairs, with laundry in the unit. I signed the lease, gave first and last month's rent, and started planning the move. Every night, Alan's cruelty got worse. Now that he thought I'd accepted his behavior, the mask slipped further. He'd make comments about my body, my worth, my usefulness. I recorded everything. During the day, I'd pack small things he wouldn't notice and move them to Anne's house. At night, I'd lie next to him and feel my skin crawl. The hardest night was when he invited his gaming friends over without telling me. I'd just gotten home from work and was lying down because my back was spasming. He came into the bedroom and told me to make myself useful and order pizzas. When I said I was in pain, he sighed dramatically. Being pregnant isn't a disability. Women have been doing it forever. My mom worked until the day before she had me. That was a lie, by the way. I'd casually asked his mom about it on the phone a week earlier. She'd had complications requiring bed rest for her last month, but his friends were right there in the living room, hearing everything. I caught one of them looking uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. I ordered the pizzas from bed with my own money. When they arrived, Alan yelled for me to get the door because they were in the middle of a match. I hauled myself up, walked past all of them in my pajamas, paid the delivery guy, and set out plates while they ignored me. After they left around 2 a.m, leaving beer cans and pizza boxes everywhere, Alan came to bed and tried to initiate sex. When I said I was exhausted, he said, "Come on, it's not like you need to do anything. Just lie there like you usually do." I went to the bathroom and cried silently, reminding myself I only had to endure this for a little while longer. My plan was to move out the weekend Alan went to his parents' place for his dad's birthday. He'd be gone overnight, which gave me a full 24 hours. With help from Anne, 2 close friends, and surprisingly, Alan's younger brother Rory, who'd witnessed one of Alan's outbursts and secretly offered to help, I'd have enough hands to make it work. 4 more days, I kept telling myself. Just 4 more days of this double life, then freedom. The morning Alan left, he was actually in a good mood, probably excited to escape pregnant wife duty for a weekend. He kissed me goodbye, told me not to do anything crazy while he was gone, and drove off. The moment his car pulled away, we started. Anne arrived first, then my friend Mia with a borrowed moving truck, then Rory looking nervous but determined. We had a detailed inventory list and exactly 32 hours to execute everything. Looking at the apartment that morning was surreal. For 5 years I'd lived there, slowly losing pieces of myself while pretending everything was fine. We moved through systematically. First my personal items and clothes, then baby things I'd purchased myself, then furniture that was clearly mine from before the relationship. Rory handled the heavy lifting, and at one point he paused and said, "Alan's my brother, but what he's doing to you is wrong." Mom raised us better than this, I almost cried right there. The most satisfying moment was disconnecting Alan's gaming PC, the one he'd fraudulently bought using a credit card in my name. I carefully packed it in its original box while Rory watched, torn between family loyalty and doing what's right. But he just shook his head and carried the box to the truck, muttering something about Alan finally facing consequences. By 7 that evening, most of my belongings were out. We ordered pizza and sat on the floor of my new apartment, eating from the box, laughing with exhaustion and relief. This time the pizza was a celebration with people who actually cared about me. The next morning, I went back for the final phase. I deep cleaned the apartment, not for Alan, but because I didn't want to give him anything to complain about. On the kitchen counter, I left divorce papers, a folder with evidence of his financial fraud, a USB drive with recordings of his verbal abuse, and a note that simply said, "Find someone better from your couch." I already have. I called his cell once I was safely in my new place. No answer. I left a voicemail telling him not to bother looking for me and that he'd find everything he needed on the counter. Then I sent a text with the same information, blocked his number, and emailed his parents so he couldn't spin a narrative making me the villain. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Clearly Alan using his friends' phones. I didn't answer. Eventually, his mother called Anne and actually broke down crying, apologizing for her son's behavior. That wasn't expected, but it was oddly healing. According to Rory, Alan came home early after getting my message. He went ballistic when he found the empty apartment and divorce papers. He called everyone we knew trying to find me, alternating between rage and suddenly claiming he wanted to fix things. Several of Alan's friends reached out to me privately. Turns out they weren't all laughing along with his cruelty. Many were uncomfortable but didn't speak up. One confessed they'd had a guy talk with him about his behavior months ago, but he dismissed them. Another said he'd stopped inviting us to couple events because he couldn't stand watching how Alan treated me. I wish they'd said something directly, but I understood why they didn't. That night, I sat in my new apartment, small but bright, with a park nearby and a balcony where I'd already set up a chair. My hospital was only 10 minutes away. I'd changed my email, created new social media accounts, set up mail forwarding. For the first time in years, silence felt safe. 3 weeks later, I went into labor 5 days after moving in. It was early, 37 weeks, and intense. Anne was my birthing partner, and she was amazing. After 19 hours and 3 hours of pushing, Lily arrived at 6:22 in the morning, screaming her head off. The moment they placed her on my chest, I knew every difficult decision I'd made was worth it. I didn't tell Alan I was in labor. My lawyer said I wasn't obligated to, and after his erratic behavior, I didn't want the stress. I notified him the day after via email, formal, with a photo of just Lily and basic information about her health. His response was exactly what I expected. Anger about not being called, demands to see his daughter immediately, accusations that I was using her as a pawn. My lawyer handled all communication. The divorce proceedings were as difficult as I'd anticipated. Alan contested everything: custody, furniture, even my car, which I'd owned before we met. His tune changed when my lawyer presented evidence of his financial fraud and verbal abuse. Suddenly, he was willing to negotiate. We settled 3 months ago. I have primary physical custody of Lily. Alan has supervised visitation for 4 hours every other weekend. Child support was set based on his actual income, which we discovered was higher than he'd claimed. He's responsible for the fraudulent credit card debt. Alan has seen Lily exactly twice since she was born. The first visit, he showed up 40 minutes late and spent most of the time taking photos for Instagram with captions about being a devoted dad. The second visit, he seemed uncomfortable with her fussiness and left early. He's canceled the last 3 scheduled visits with increasingly thin excuses. Part of me is hurt for Lily's sake, but mostly I'm relieved. When Lily was about 3 months old and I was starting to feel like myself again, I did something kind of epic. During the divorce, we discovered Alan had been hiding money in a separate account. I was awarded a significant portion since it was technically marital assets. Instead of just putting it into savings, I decided Lily and I deserved a break. I booked us a 5-day trip to a beachfront resort in Florida. Anne came to help with Lily, and for the first time in forever, I actually relaxed. On the 3rd day, I was sitting by the pool while Lily napped in her stroller. I was wearing my first bikini since before pregnancy. My body looked different: stretch marks, a C-section scar, softer in places, but I felt proud of what it had accomplished. I asked Anne to take a photo of me in my swimsuit, looking out at the ocean. I looked happy, confident, and yes, already slimmer than I'd been while pregnant. I sent that photo directly to Alan with just one caption: "Already slimming down. Don't worry." Then I blocked him again before he could respond. That moment of reclaiming my body, my confidence, and yes, some of his hidden money felt like the final piece of breaking free. Now, 10 months after that day with the groceries, Lily is 6 months old. She's healthy, happy, and absolutely the light of my life. She has my eyes, Alan's nose, unfortunately, and a personality that's entirely her own. She started sitting up unassisted last week and is currently obsessed with a stuffed sloth my sister got her. Physically, my body has healed, though it's different than before. I have stretch marks and a C-section scar, and I'm about 15 pounds heavier than my pre-pregnancy weight. And you know what? I'm completely at peace with that. Financially, I'm stable. The child support helps, and I've become better at budgeting now that I'm not subsidizing Alan's music career. I've even started a savings account for Lily's future. As for Alan, last I heard, he's telling everyone I had postpartum psychosis and stole his daughter and his money. He conveniently leaves out the financial fraud and verbal abuse. His Instagram is full of posts about fighting for his rights as a father, despite continually canceling his visitation. Sometimes I think about that day with the groceries, how at the time it felt like the worst moment of my life, but in reality, it was the moment that saved me. That cruel sentence, "You're disgusting," became my turning point. It was the push I needed to finally see clearly. I'm not going to lie and say single motherhood is easy. It's exhausting and lonely sometimes. But I'd rather do this alone than raise Lily in a home where her mother is disrespected daily. I refuse to let her think that's what love looks like. Alan's mom has been respectful, checking in on Lily and asking if she can visit. Unlike her son, she genuinely seems to care. I'm considering allowing supervised visits with her separate from Alan's time. Lily deserves to know the family members who will love her consistently and respectfully. Every night before bed, I hold Lily close and whisper, "We did it." Because we did. We made it out. And every single day, I'm grateful for that moment of clarity in the shower when I finally chose us over him. Sometimes the ugliest moment is the start of freedom. Sometimes the cruelest words are the ones that finally wake you up. And sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself and your child is simply walk away and never look back. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.